Kia ora mai tātou. Welcome to this meeting of the Wellington Water Committee on the 15th of March. Before I get underway, if you could just take a note of the emergency procedures on the screen and make sure that your mobile phone is switched to silent mode as well, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll now move to our opening karakia. Please feel free to join me. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e he ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Item 2, apologies. So I've received apologies from Mayor Connolly and Lee Rahina August and also Helmut Modlik. So I'll move those apologies. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Public comment. We don't have any members of the public here who wish to speak. So we'll move through to conflict of interest declarations. Does any member have a conflict of interest to declare? No. Straight through to the chair's statement. So I thought I would just give a brief update, as I do at these committee meetings, of what's been happening since we last met. So first, touching on the acute water shortage challenge, which we've all well aware of and been facing over the recent months. So Wellington and South Wairarapa remain at level 2 water restrictions. The next 2 weeks remain important as we get through March, which typically sees drier, hotter weather. Wellington Water confirmed that the likelihood of level 3 water restrictions at this point is reducing, which is good. There is now a 16% chance of increasing to restrictions to level 3 and a 5% chance of going to level 4. While those numbers are a lot better than what we've seen in recent months, we're not quite out of the woods yet. And I just want to pass on my thanks on behalf of all of us to our residents and organisations for their response and helping us obviously conserve more water and get through this summer period. Just touching on the regional plan for water services, the water services delivery model, which we're working on currently. So councils across the Wellington region are considering a proposal on a joint up approach to develop a new affordable and sustainable water delivery model at council meetings this month. I know some have already passed it, I believe Salves, Upper Hutt and Wellington City, with others looking to consider it over the coming weeks. And we'll hear more on this from Dougal this morning, so I won't go into it too much further. I'll leave that for him. We are, of course, into our draft long-term plan discussions at the moment, where investment in water is a key discussion point. As a region, we are investing over $3.6 billion in CapEx into water infrastructure, and of course, we're working through trying to strike that balance between affordability and knowing the infrastructure challenges that we have in the investment that's needed. I know that this is a conversation that is happening up and down the country, and a report released by Local Government New Zealand yesterday demonstrated some of the cost escalations which particularly water and transport has been facing over the last 3 years, around 20% higher than predicted, which all has a flow-on impact to us in preparing those draft long-term plans. So just acknowledging it is a challenging time as we work through them, but we look forward to hearing from our communities with the respective plans. Just to touch on some regional highlights, great progress is being made installing new wastewater infrastructure in Wellington CBD. This will support the city's growth and prevent overflows into the harbour. Work is now complete on building a new pump station along Taranaki Street, and we're making good progress renewing 3.2 kilometres of pipe and 7 pump stations. We have completed the installation of around 270 metres of pipe along Victoria and Wakefield Street, and on track to complete around 900 metres along Taranaki Street by the end of the year, 5 months ahead of schedule. Preventing water loss remains a priority, as mentioned before. Since August, Wellington Water have fixed 227 service connections, saving over around 2 million litres of water per day. Service connections are located beneath footpaths or roads at the point where main water pipes connect to private property pipes, usually involving pipework, fittings and tobies. This proactive service connection renewal work is in addition to the work Wellington Water is doing in response to leaks that are reported regularly as well. So I will close it off there, and we'll move straight through to meeting minutes from the Monday, the 11th of December. So does any member have any question relating to the correctness of the minutes? No, so I'll move that those minutes be confirmed as true and correct. Do I have a seconder? Mia Guppy, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Item 7, Local Water Done Well Legislation and Water Service Delivery Plan Update. Dougal, welcome. So, of course, Dougal List is the Program Director for Water Reform for Wellington Water Councils, and he's going to give an update to us, and then we'll open up for questions. Thanks, Dougal.
Kia ora koutou, committee, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So today I was just going to provide a brief update on the legislative pathway for local water done well, and as mentioned by the Chair, an update on the plan by councils to respond to that policy framework and start work on a joint water services delivery plan. So the legislative pathway of local water done well has already begun. So the first bill basically repealed the former legislation around water entities, and that was passed in February. The second and third bills are expected to be introduced mid this year and then late this year. The first bill focuses very much on the framework that will be required for councils to develop a water services delivery plan within 12 months of that legislation being enacted. And that framework's based on a stronger framework around economic and regulatory oversight, with the central government having a stronger role in that space, and a very strong focus around financial sustainability of future models. And so that's both the investment and also the potential future model. The third bill, we're expecting to see introduced late this year and probably enacted around mid next year, focuses more on the long-term financial sustainability for water, and is expected to introduce more details around economic regulation and also some new financing and structural tools to enable new financial models and organisations like CCOs to be independently stand on their own from councils. So quite a lot of detail still to come, but anticipation of that framework coming forward, councils in the region are starting to organise and consider how they could potentially work together on a joint water services delivery plan. And as mentioned by the Chair, this has already been considered and supported by Wellington, Upper Hutt and Hutt councils, with papers expected to go to other councils over the next couple of weeks. The process would be supported by having a joint oversight group made up of elected members and iwi Māori partners to ensure that there is that representative oversight and involvement from all councils. Councils would, of course, still retain decision-making rights in this process, and there'd be a number of off-ramps where councils could choose to either continue on with the process or make their own decisions about how they proceed with local water done well. We're anticipating a phased approach. The first phase would focus very much on what could be an appropriate conceptual delivery model, working across councils, because that would really underpin how you would then develop a joint water services delivery plan across a number of organisations. We anticipate that would take through to around August this year, and then that would support a process of engagement with communities and stakeholders and council decision making. And then post that, councils would then work towards completing the water services delivery plan and start developing the detailed design and implementation requirements around a new organisation. So those are our timeframes that we're working towards. That's subject to kind of the introduction of the legislation and also working through detailed requirements from councils, so that we really understand what's going to be needed from each council to have confidence in this process and confidence in the right kind of model moving forward. So we expect that quite a lot of focus around this process with councils over the coming months, and particularly working closely with that oversight group, who will be really important in this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Dougal. Any questions from members on that? No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Move on to item 8, which is the company and governance update. And Tonya and Nick, welcome. Is there anything you'd like to cover in your report? And then we'll open up for questions as well.
Kia ora tātou, committee members. Just like to state today we've got myself as chair of the Wellington Water Board and directors Alex Hare, Bill Bayfield and Pat Doherty with us. So available to chat afterwards and here to support the agenda. I just would like to begin by reinforcing, Mr Chair, your comments about regional the risk of acute water shortage across the region, and I know that we've been on guard over the last 3 months as we've managed our way through the risks, and we're not quite out the other end yet, but I know that the committee is concerned with the fact that this will be an ongoing risk, and that you will be also concerned about how Wellington Water mitigates and manages that throughout the year, and that's something that we are focused on, both with the advice given around the need to fix the backlog of leaks, the management of the DAF project at Temarua, and also ongoing conservation awareness that will continue. And you've recognised, Mr Chair, the work of residents of the Wellington region in reducing their consumption over the last few months, and I think that's worth recognising here as well. The early interest and ongoing engagement with Taumata Arawai, the water regulator, is also going to be important as we take and we fulfil those obligations throughout the year. Just like to comment on the key aspects of the investment report in item 9 in front of the committee today. You know that the board was straight up in terms of our asking Wellington Water to be really clear about the level of investment over the next 10 years that we saw as a way of overcoming over time the challenges that we've had in underinvestment in our networks over the decades. And so really today I want to sort of recognise the work that's been done by councils in setting your long-term plans. It's never an easy time, particularly with the financial pressures that you are up against. But we're also aware that the region needs to invest a significant amount of money, some $30 billion it's estimated over the next 30 years in capital expenditure to address those known risks and deliver on the strategic priorities that you as a committee have set. And the first 10 years of the indicative CapEx program provided by councils for Wellington Water sits at $3.63 billion, and that's representing about 48% of what Wellington Water recommended as a deliverable program. We recognise, as I say, that significant financial pressure to councils and ratepayers, and it's also important that we also recognise that there are ongoing risks as a result of funding to that level. Our current water funding model, your current model, prevents you from investing, more to the level that I think you would be comfortable with as well. And we know that there's ongoing mahi where it comes to developing what a new model might be. But until renewal funding reaches that level advised, the network will continue to age. We will continue to get more leaks, and the cost to fix those leaks will continue to increase. We can't sugarcoat that, but we do recognise the efforts that you have put into additional funding, both at CapEx but also in your ongoing leak investment. So the proposed total of operational expenditure for 2024 to 34 is $1.46 billion, which is 84% of Wellington Water's recommended OPEX budget, and it's really positive in the sense that it will allow us to react to that network age and stress that's likely, that is likely to be more obvious to residents. It's already obvious to all of us. And despite the committee prioritising investment in existing infrastructure, the funding levels are not sufficient to address the pipe renewals backlog within the 30 years. And that shortfall highlights a critical challenge in maintaining the reliability and service levels expected by all of us here, by mana whenua, by communities, and that has significant implications for long-term sustainability and operational efficiency. The report also outlines the challenges of managing water supply and demand, including ongoing water shortage risk, and the proposed investments, as I've stated, focus on leak detection and repair, on pressure management and renewals of ageing infrastructure. But the constrained budget may not be sufficient to fully address the increasing demand and leakage issues, and that emphasises the need for strategic and sustained investment in renewals. The other operational reporting in the agenda also demonstrates significant challenges with wastewater treatment plant compliance, and we know that that is going to be a focus for all of us. The limited funding and investment, which is, as we've stated, is below recommended levels, impacts the ability to advance the strategic priorities that this committee set last year, such as improving environmental water quality, supporting population growth, achieving net carbon zero emissions, and enhancing resilience to natural hazards. It's important that the region, as it considers its move into a new water entity, that we consider the need to how we meet those strategic investment levels required. I'd like to end by wishing the councils the best for your ongoing deliberations for your long-term plans. I know that isn't an easy balancing act for you to make, and that there are significant cost pressures from across your agenda. But we're hopeful that the adoptions will confirm water meters with volumetric charging in the early years of those plans, as these will assist the work in finding and fixing the leaks on public and private property as a potential revenue source for reinvestment into your networks, and building that critical community consciousness around the importance of water conservation so we can protect our catchments and our most precious natural resource. And I'd also like to note that you will finalise the statement of intent, letter of expectation at this meeting, and we look forward as a board and as a company to meeting your requirements for the year ahead. Kia ora.
Thank you, Nick. Do you want Tonya to go, and then we'll open it up for both? Yes, okay, go Tonya.
Sure.
Yep.
Kia ora tātou, and I just thank you for that, Nick. To put a management lens on the report to date and a bit of an update, given we are now in month 3 of Q3. As always, like to lead out with our people. We're still maintaining good engagement. We've had a period of uncertainty. We've had the health and safety risk identified last time around. They're under a bit of stress from media attention and members of the public taking an interesting approach to feedback. But our retention remains stable and our engagement remains good amongst our staff, which is important as we go through this work, that we have enough people and the right people to do the work. In terms of finances, our capital program is on track. We are, of course, tracking the renewals and they are going well, and we're looking to meet that target of 20 kilometres this year. A nice moment to hand back o Mororo, the Greenbelt, to Wellington City Council this year. Of course, it's been live for a year, but it's lovely to see it merge back into the landscape. And of course, we've got a good bead on Te Marua, which is probably our most important capital project for the year. It is a really tricky one. We are building a new piece of equipment to enable more water treatment onto a live plant. So it'll remain high risk, but it has got a lot of attention. OPEX-wise, it's always landing 6 jumbo jets on 6 postage stamps, but we look like we're coming in on target for that. And from an overhead perspective for the Wellington Water Management fee, we've already given back over 2 million into the OPEX line. We're looking to get to 0 or under this year in order to be able to pivot, which is where I'm going to head to next. We, as a result of both the context, the new look at reform, as well as the direction set out in the letter of expectation, we have to do a little bit of a management pivot internally. We have to make sure our resources are focused on the acute water shortage. That is a request from all of our councils, and at Taumata Arawai, we must make sure we're putting the right amount of effort into that. We need to work with the region on bringing in meters, and that's going to be a massive piece of work, short and long term, and we need to make sure we're resourced correctly for that. And then the other request upon us is to be to reset how we are measured so that it's both relevant and current, and that we can provide our customers, which are you good people here, with the information that you need from us to get some assurance that we're doing the right thing. The other thing to note is the in out of this as a an oversight is that the increasing influence of regulation on our business, and that will increase as we get to economic regulation. Taumata Arawai, we've handed in the first full Taumata Arawai report of over 200 measures, and as well as the interest that Taumata Arawai now has in all of us in making sure there's enough water next year. We also have the influence of Greater Wellington, and they are holding us to account on the performance of our wastewater treatment plants, and that will be probably as big a challenge, if not more, than the acute water shortage as we head into winter. Those plants are old, they need more investment, they need nursing, while we are able to fund the big elements of work that are ahead of us. But overall, the company's in pretty good shape. When I look at how the company's going, I look at how the people are going, and they are still wanting to do the best for the region and water. And our job is to make sure that they have the tools and resources available to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. So we'll open it up for questions. I'll kick off just around our response to our leaky pipes. There has been obviously some conversations with the private sector plumbers around utilising their capacity to be able to get on top of the backlog that we've got. Did you want to give an update to the committee on where that's at?
Well, I'd first like to acknowledge all of the organisations that have reached out to us with help. We have had a lot of people look, from a systems perspective right through to the plumbers who are seeing if they can help with their side of the work. I want to also lead out that we've got local contracting families that are out of work at the moment because of the change in capital spend this year. So we are working with them first and foremost to help. We are working with the Plumbers Association. We've got 2 local businesses that are going to help us run a trial to see if in the space between the house and the public network there is room to work that doesn't increase the risk to the network. And I need to remind us all at this point that when work is done in a household by a plumber, the risk is to the household. When work is done by us on our network, the risk is to everybody on that network. So we do need to make sure that the right controls are in place so that we can give you assurance that we are not introducing a new risk to the network and the safe drinking water for the people. So those are the guardrails for the plumber conversation. But we're engaged. We've just had feedback from the 2 businesses that they're going to work through the proposal, come back to us with something, and in the next week or so we should have something to work on.
Mayor Baker?
Thank you. Did I hear you correctly say there are contractors who are still available? Because I've heard out there that the contractors have not got work, yet we're all screaming. And thank you for the quick work you've done this week in stopping the sewage going into our harbour from our break. That was a great job. I know it's going to be a big job to fix. So we all have problems and renewals to do. I just wondered why we've got contractors doing nothing.
Well, Wellington City Council's budget was overspent last year in capital, and so in order to manage that over the 3 years, there was renewals work that was removed from the program this year. So there are 3 contractors that were impacted by that. 2 of them have found work up Kapiti Coast, and the 3rd one is we've got employed helping out our COG team as much as we can, but they are businesses that are currently looking for work.
So we won't lose them from our region?
We won't lose them from the panel. They're
right.
Good, loyal people. But the additional capital work won't spark up again until the 1st of July. So we are doing everything we can to keep them
so
on
once
the hook
again,
for us.
It's our budgets
Yes.
again, once again.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
But I would just say, certainly with my Lower Hutt hat on, we are, working alongside Wellington Water around managing our budgets in in a more dynamic way. So the last thing we would want to hear is that there are people out there not doing things when we've got work that needs to be done. So I just really want to stress that. And I know that that's exactly what, Bruce Hodgins on our end is doing.
That's right. Hutt
we want
City
that
has brought
reassurance.
capital work forward into this financial year so that we can pick some of that up with our locals. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Connolly.
So my questions kind of relate to the next three items. So this one's about governance and company update. Then there's the one on more specifics around LTP spend, and then there's the half-yearly report. And I feel like they're kind of all basically connected, and you've already raised issues from the LTP spend in your presentation. So I will ask them now. I found it quite useful when you get down to the, just a wee moan for a start, there's some graphics in here with dashboards. There were so many acronyms in those, I found it hard to even comprehend them. So if we could just provide a wee key on some of the acronyms, that would be great. In terms of the half-yearly report really nicely set out, I guess, the situation that we have and the fact that Wellington Water presented 3 pathways to the councils for considering investment. So there was kind of a best case scenario spend. Then there was what we need to spend to start improving the network and getting rid of the backlog of concerns that we have. And then there was a figure at the bottom, 2.8 billion, which was a keep the lights on figure. So what we need to spend to actually start chipping away at our backlog was a figure of around 7.6 billion, I think. And so we're seeing investment at 3.6 billion. So towards the lower end of the keep the lights on versus actually addressing the issues that we have. And we all know why that is. I guess I was hoping, is there any way that we can, you can give us a nice, easy figure to kind of comprehend what that level of funding means for our asset condition in general? So there's another wee table in the half-yearly report that kind of shows what the position of our pipes will be in after 35 years. And that was quite useful because we could see that for the majority of councils, their LTP spend was actually starting to improve the position of pipes. So the position of pipes that were seriously in jeopardy was going to decrease over a 35-year period. So I was just wondering if kind of for the whole network, we could see with the level of funding that we're kicking in, what that is going to mean from an asset perspective over time, in a 5-year, a 10-year, and a 40-year period. If this level of investment continues, what are we actually going to see from the performance of our assets in general? So I thought that would be useful if that's a thing that you could do.
Just microphone. Sorry, Tonya, if you could, just your microphone.
Thanks, Kim. That's a big question, Ros, and Julie will touch on it on the way through the presentation. And the risks are set out and they are multiple. We are putting more funding towards reducing the acute water shortage, but that does come at the expense of the other strategic priorities. So the wastewater treatment across the region, and particularly in South Wairarapa, is a concern. And the abilities for those treatment plants to perform to the increased expectations we have of our environment, we are going to have there is a gap and it's widening.
So that was actually going to be my next question, was I can't find a breakdown in all these papers, essentially, of the money against the 3 priority, against drinking water, wastewater, stormwater. And so although we've got a global figure, I can't see whether the focus that we've had on leaks and drinking water has been at the expense of wastewater.
Yep. Well,
and I feel that that's really important intel to have.
We can give you that now. As councils have landed on their LTPs, we might need to come back to you with that breakdown, if that's all right.
Yep.
Right. Thanks.
Any other questions? I think it follows on from Councillor Connolly's last question there around the challenge with our wastewater treatment plants. There is an obvious issue with leaks. It's very much in the public domain. Everyone's aware of it. I think it's raised on the daily, probably with all of us in this room. But I don't think there is an understanding of the risk when it comes to our wastewater treatment plants, which from an environmental point of view can have a far greater impact, putting aside increased regulatory standards and expectations as well. So have the team been thinking about how we socialise that challenge over the next wee while as well?
Yes, we have, and we're going to call it the Winter's Challenge because it's an unseen risk at this point until you get the Bottomley Park incidents or the breakage in the outfall pipes at both the Western wastewater treatment plant and happens periodically for Seaview. That is an indication of the condition of those assets. They are all reached the end of their life. The Moa Point plant has got some operational issues. Porirua is the sole treatment plant in the metropolitan region that is currently compliant. And that is because there has been a steady stream of capital investment in it over the years and it has been upgraded. South Wairarapa, as we know, the 3 treatment plants are either out of consent or in breach of consent. So it is worth bringing to this committee, I think, an assessment of the risk of each of those and having a workshop around what does that look like for us, because it is complex and each treatment plant has its own issues, but we should be very aware of them and ensure that there is a reasonable level of funding going into their upgrade over the next few years in the LTP and how that will be best spent, and particularly involving mana whenua in that conversation right up front so that we are meeting our moral guidelines as well as our compliancy ones. That makes sense?
No, thanks, Tonya.
I'm sure Helmut could say that a lot.
Mia Baker, then back to Councillor Connolly.
Sorry, can I make a comment on that? And it is just a comment and it's a personal one. But it frustrates me to hear that South Wairarapa don't have capacity when Carterton down the road have capacity. And this is why the Three Waters are needing to be as a group, because when you have one region next door and there is capacity that could be solved, sorry, I'm frustrated.
Councillor Connolly?
This is a deeply operational question, but I was once of the belief that the budgets between the different Three Waters was completely ring-fenced and that there was no ability to spend money in one area in another. I have subsequently been told that is not necessarily the case, but I'm just wondering whether or not it is the case. And, you know, when we talk about the agility to move money and to address problems by their priority and also where we have contractors and where we have spend, I'm just wondering if the current structure allows for that agility.
That depends by council. So, for example, Upper Hutt rates by water, so it's really difficult to move between. They've got auditing and accounting rules that prohibit that. An example, Wellington City, you've got a 10% threshold over which council has to make a decision to move between waters. So it does depend by council.
Do you think there's enough agility in that system to, I guess, respond if we have particularly, if we need to pivot towards wastewater being our primary concern as above leak prevention, for example?
Well, at this point, Ros, the key thing is getting our LTP figures right and the balance right in there, and then working with councils. If we need to move, then most councils are good at moving money across if required.
I think the key question would be, you're confident that Wellington Water is providing that free and frank advice around the extent of what is needed in the wastewater space just as much as the drinking water, even though there's a clear spotlight on drinking water at the moment. So that advice is coming through to councils. Yep.
Yes.
And you'll notice, Mr. Chair, I did flag when I spoke that the significant challenges with wastewater treatment compliance, it's in your dashboards today. As Tonya mentioned, we will be bringing back in winter, well, before winter, a much sharper lens for the committee to have an oversight of that, and what's the sort of the investment that's required specifically per plant.
And certainly acknowledge we're having this conversation because you are looking to highlight it at this table. So do appreciate you doing that. Yep. Okay. No other questions? If there are none, we will go through to the recommendations, which is to note and receive the report. Do I have a seconder for that? Mayor Baker, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to item 9, which is impacts of indicative regional Three Waters investment for the LTPs. So, Julie, welcome. Really appreciate the work you've done in pulling this information together for us. Any comments you'd obviously like to make, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to do a few acknowledgements, actually. The board chair's already acknowledged the work that councils have done and the constraints councils are under. Thank you for what you have been able to do. I know that many councils have prioritised investment in Three Waters, and that's come at the expense of other portfolios. I'd also like to acknowledge the iwi partners that we've been working with. Thank you for the conversations we've had so far, the understanding we're starting to build, and I realise it's the start of a journey, so thank you. And I'd like to just do an acknowledgement for your officers as well, who have worked incredibly hard, been very collaborative with us, and we've really appreciated that, so thank you. I do need to draw your attention to a couple of discrepancies in the appendix, the numbers. We will correct that for the record. There's some minor issues that don't impact the overall regional story, but we do want to make sure that it's accurate for everybody. So we will work to get that sorted in the minutes. The paper sets out our best advice on the implications that we can see for your proposed programs. The risks speak for themselves, I believe. And I think we'll just go, rather than go through a big, long sort of summary of it, we'll just open up for questions.
Thanks, Julie. Any questions? Kick off. Mayor Baker.
Just a quick one. Your graph on page 75 lists Wellington as our largest city, but as the 4th ranking of capital spending. And I thought they had increased their spending. I just wondered whether you actually had that right, because I know that at the table they'd increased it.
We'll just check.
Okay.
Can we come back to you on that?
Do you know if that's right, Tori? Because I
mean, we have increased our spending.
Okay, page 75. I just wanted to check the graph was actually right.
We'll just check while we,
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Connolly?
You're promoting
Promotion.
me. Me and Guffey had better watch out. So in the paper, it talks about how Hutt City has looked to boost funding to essentially clear all the leaks on its books in a year, which is an awesome initiative and one that I'm very looking forward to having it happen. I guess the thing with leaks that I'm a bit pondering at the moment is, and it may be that it's just a Sisyphean task that we can't get make any traction on, but it seems like we fix leaks like there's no tomorrow, and we're not actually making any inroads into the water that we're using. And so I'm just wanting to explore that connection a little bit more. In fact, the amount of water that whilst we have this figure that approximately half the water is being lost in leaks, we seem to see more impact from people, watering their lawns in summer than we do see impact from our leak activities in reducing the amount of water. So it isn't obvious to me that the millions of dollars and the thousands of staff we've got fixing the leaks is actually making any difference to the numbers that come in. So I'm wondering if we could use Hutt City as an exemplar. Like, if they're going to put in the extra money to clear their leaks for a year, can we put in some other water meters into the network, not at every house, but at nodes, to actually give us some figures on what clearing the leak backlog looks like in terms of our water reduction? Because at the moment, it seems like we're spending a lot of money, we're making a lot of effort, and it's not actually, doesn't show up in any of our reporting. So I just wondered if you could comment on that.
So we'll have a look at that, Ros, and come back to you. It's all right. Any comments, Tonya? Or do you want to?
I can answer in brief. They can measure that currently, and the trick is really the only way you can actually see an improvement is when you get ahead of the rate of leaks are occurring. So at the moment, and historically, we've maintained status quo. So we've had a lot of expenditure to maintain status quo, but now in Hutt, we should expect now to push further forward, and be able to articulate to you what that saving in megalitres is.
So will we need extra meters and extra data in order to do that? Like, it would be just so helpful if we could actually see a connection between the work we're doing and the leaks. I mean, that would be like a real game changer in terms of the communication that we send out to our public.
All the engineers would always want more meters and more ways to measure it, but I'm pretty confident for my engineers told me that's possible to articulate. So we'll have a go at that.
Any other questions? Just the question from me, Julie. From this global picture that we've got, and this is the first time I think this committee sort of looked to pull this information together around what our regional priorities are and how that looks and is translated into the individual decisions of councils. What do you see as the biggest risk, and what do you see as the biggest opportunity with what's currently in the draft long-term plans?
One of the biggest risks is that the funding that's committed for the first 3 years is not enough compared to the funding outside of the funding lifts from year 4 onwards. So that creates probably 2 key things. One is the level of renewals that we can get to. Renewals are the backbone of your infrastructure and your services, and that's for drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. So that's a slowdown for the first 3 years. And then, of course, it's already been mentioned, the wastewater treatment plants. The investment kicks up from year 4 onwards, so you're holding this risk for 3 years. And then biggest opportunity is around, I think it's great that we've got this focus on drinking water. And I think it's great that we've looked at that more broadly, not just at finding and fixing leaks, but at water meters, and that's setting us up for the future as a region. And the benefits of that will be, will be, very good for us.
Thank you. Helmut.
Yeah, kia ora. So I've been pondering Ros's thoughtful queries. I'm not sure what the counterfactual of not plugging some leaks, though. I suppose you've got to find some other ones to block. But anyway, I've been pondering the implications of the questions and answers, and that one piece of analysis that I'd appreciate seeing, and I don't know if it's been done and I've just missed it, but if we have an unconstrained plan for remediation of the deficits that are in place. And I'd particularly be interested in just picking up on the sensitivity analysis type frame that Ros is just suggesting, because it seems to me that wastewater, drinking and storm, each have their own story. The asset state, the risks, remediation, each one is its own story. And it would be very interesting, I think it would be really valuable to understand what the unconstrained picture would be given the current state. No resource constraints, financial or otherwise, and what would be an optimal go forward in respect of each of those separately and in total. And then, and the why, and what would be the assumptions around the prioritization of work and why you do that first and that second and so forth on each of those network elements. Because presumably that analysis would surface the risk rewards without regard to constraints, the risk rewards on what's needed to get each of those to where we need to go. And then on that foundation of analysis to then come back to some of the prioritization and, you know, resource scaling, et cetera, questions. And you know, I mean, you could almost do a sort of like a slide scalar thing on what you're going to get, you know, like, so because there was a bit of a conversation there about allocation between the different categories of asset investment. And so if you're gonna constrain your resources and slide it around, well, that foundation analysis, I presume, would enable us to see what we're getting, the risks, so forth. You get the picture? I think that would be really awesome. And then lastly, I think what would be great is it would enable us to get as clear eyes as soon as possible on the scale of investable activity, the workforce investable activity, you know, scale up, et cetera, blah, 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 and overlay those, you know, because, you know, we're not going to flick a switch and have all the money we need. That's going to be, and we're not going to flick a switch and have all the women and men we need and so forth. Right? I just love to get some sort of clarity and coherence on that, the dynamics of all of that. And at the moment, to be honest, it feels a little bit like, you know, pillar to post, whatever. You know, so anyway, I think that would be really helpful for everybody. And as I say, if I've missed that and that analysis has been done, if you just point me to it, that would be really helpful. Kia ora.
We haven't done the analysis in that way. There are some good suggestions there. We'd like to see what's possible in terms of what you're asking, but I understand seeing the whole system and how that works together and interacts and what that means for the future is going to be useful.
I think it would be helpful for you, and certainly be helpful for funders and probably the community too, to have a shared understanding. Because part of the thing that vexes me is we don't have a shared understanding, and people have unmet expectations, and that's as much a problem as the actual underlying substantive realities, right? And so I think that's worth the investment, trying to close the gap on our shared understanding or lack thereof. Kapoi. Kia ora.
And there's also potential benefits for, you know, what's going to happen in the future with a future entity too, would also be useful, yeah.
Mayor Whanau?
Thank you. Just to go back to Mayor Baker's question, the table is correct. So we were able to provide a minor increase in 24-25 because of our debt headroom. It got a bit closer. We've pushed it to the outer years a bit more. So that, just to let you know that it's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose touching on the same topic, because I think this is what you have alluded to, Julie, around the biggest risk of the regional picture. Do you just want to explain a bit more for us and how, you know, I suppose how the 10-year budget is set, like in regards to that first 3-year period? Because as you do acknowledge, I think totally acknowledge, you can see there is an uplift year 4 and after. What do we do? Is there anything we can do within the budgets that have been allocated across councils to change that? Acknowledging Mayor Whanau's point around councils having to grapple with their own debt caps and the likes, but just want to delve into that a bit more.
I'll just hand over to Pete Wells, who's got more across the detail.
So in principle, in the first 3 years, a lot of the focus starts on the already committed programs. So there's a good portion of the work which is already committed, and there's examples across the region of large projects which are taking up a significant amount of the dollars in the years 1 and 2. Then there are a number of elements that are kind of annual recurring expenses. We have to provision for some reactive funding for each of the network elements, for each of the plants. We have to provision for some planned funding. We have to provision for some modelling work and those kind of things. And it's only when you've got through those bits that you can look at the new projects that you can bring in on top of that. And so that constrains how you approach the first 3 years and what you can bring in. And when there's quite limited headroom, particularly in year one and a bit in year two as well, it gets quite hard. And you can see that in some of the programs where, and Greater Wellington is a good example of that, there's some very large committed programs in year one, which then drop off into year two, and then you can have the ability to make choices again. So that's the space that we find ourselves in, and we've worked with officers in each council to try and work that out. And as we move through towards the end of this year, there will be a little bit of shuffling as we work out where programs are finishing, because programs don't just stop on the 30th of June and new ones start on 1 July. There will be stuff that we will need to manage with officers as to how we address that across that boundary.
So I suppose just to put a question in another way, is there anything we can be doing now to reduce the risk that you've identified? Or are you confident that you're managing that as best as possible with officials?
Look, I think we'll keep the dialogue going, because things will keep rising up in terms of there will be every day something changes, like the failure in Pororua the other day, and you want to reassess the risks that you've got and work with officers. So we will keep that dialogue going. That's the best we can do with it. We understand the constraints. We'll do the best and give the best advice we can as to where the risks are, and then based on that, we can look at the program again and reorder it if we think we haven't got the risks quite ranked right. Yes, if there's opportunities to bring more through, that helps, and often it's helpful to proceed with early design works so that there's things that are ready if it is an opportunity to move into delivery. So every little bit of money helps in that we can then advance a little bit more design somewhere or do a few more reactive bits, because there are, as the networks get older, there will be failures, and having the ability to do reactive work and fix those quickly is also quite helpful rather than leave them for prolonged periods of time. So there's plenty of opportunities for us to use money if it's available, and we're happy to work dynamically with councils to make sure it's used in the right way, given the knowledge.
So am I hearing, just so everyone's clear, am I hearing that the biggest thing we could do as governors in our councils is basically increase the budgets in those earlier years? That's what, so I think just need to be really clear with your answers, right? Because is that what you're saying?
Yes, more money gives a lot more choices and we can do a lot more with it, yes.
And particularly that 3-year period, yes, okay.
3-year period.
And so also bring that money forward, reduces the risk in the short term.
Yep, okay. Okay, thank you. No other questions? Really appreciate your report, guys. Thank you. Okay, so we have some recommendations here, which are noting recommendations 1 through to 5. I'd just like to put an additional recommendation, which is that this report be shared with each of the individual shareholder councils to go as part of either their full council meeting or committee meeting. I know there is that varies with the Wellington Water papers, but I think this particular report is really important for each council to consider the regional picture as well. And I think it's just helpful information. So I'll add that as a recommendation 6, if people are happy with that. So I'll move recommendations 1 through to 6. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. I declare that carried. Okay, moving through to item 10, which is the acute water shortage risk. Page 78 of the agenda. And Charles, welcome. We'll pass it over to you.
Since drafting the paper, the updating modelling has been run with the new information that we get from NIWA every month and has been redistributed to all the councils. The most important part of that is that the likelihood of level 3 and level 4 have substantially come down. So that'll be reflected in the communications that we give to your communities as we begin the off-ramping of this summer and making sure that we leave the communities in a good state to come back to us as we head into next summer. So you'll see that. That gives a news. Also, there's indications that obviously the Taumata Arawai are giving more attention to the next summer, as of course we are, and we've already commenced work to improve our modelling and present a new set of risks of where we think we'll be as we head into next summer. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Charles. Any questions from members? Councillor Connolly.
Two from me. The first one is around risk, and just I wondered if I've seen so much commentary that suggests people have very poor understanding of statistics and risk, and including the fact that, you know, as we've come to the end of summer, the risk has decreased. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that just is a no-brainer, but some people are like, oh, they must have been lying to us from the outset because the risk is now lower than they said it was initially. So I'm just wondering if we can have a think for next year about how we communicate risk in a way that might help people understand it, because I don't think they understand it currently. And I think there's a bit of criticism which is unfounded based on a poor understanding of risk. My other question is around the additional supply from the Timarua work. I understand that there's like a 50% chance that the Timarua work will be done by the end of this year and a 90% chance it will be done by the end of March. I'm just wondering if there's any way we can, I mean, even if it came online mid-summer, it would make a massive difference, right? So are there things that Wellington Water can be doing, and also things that Greater Wellington can be doing to help ensure that that project comes online in time for the next acute water shortage?
We've gone back to the project, and they are confident that everything they've done that can be done in order to deliver that early. Even the date was brought forward was a stretch goal to achieve an impact for next summer, and then they've subsequently said, well, there's actually 3 streams within that, so we can get 20 of the 60. So they're working at every option possible to make sure that they give the best chance that the one of the streams would be available this summer, and they're in good contact with your officers about that, and at this stage they've got all the resourcing that could be applied to it applied.
So that's really the only thing that we're doing differently for next summer as opposed to this summer that will actually materially change the situation. Am I correct?
No, there's substantially more investment in leaks. So that goes back to what I was saying before about in the past, maybe we've held our own. The substantial increase in funding from the councils to address leaks will result in a reduction of water loss. Exactly how much and how that will play out, we need to do a bit more modelling to give you that surety that exactly what you're talking about with Hutt City, but that is a change.
As I suggested though, Hutt City aside, because they're making a substantial effort to get the leaks down, but there doesn't seem to be any reduction in volume as a result of the leak work that we've done. It's just keeping it steady state.
To date, that would be a fair comment, but I think you'll see an improvement over this year.
Okay, we've got Helmut, then Mayor Baker.
I'm pretty sure this has come up before. Have we, because I know that the impact of leaky domestic laterals is a big thing in different locations. Are we thinking about how else to get that part of the total network remediated concurrently, because that presumably belongs to the landowners and so forth, and still would have a workforce impact. But yeah, so is there any thinking about how to try to get that side of the equation working at the same time as well?
Yeah, I think it's a bit artificial, isn't it, the risk percentages and things that this summer's ended and next summer, because the risk just continues. So, for instance, the communications plan will pivot and de-emphasise, obviously, engagement with the community to more about the summer to more about education about leakage, how to identify it. So there is that. It's very difficult to help our community to identify leaks on their part of the network without meters.
Mayor Baker.
Sorry, thank you. It's probably similar to both of you. I mean, Porirua doesn't look like it has that many leaks. We're down to 240, which is great, but actually it's about the renewals. And some of these leaks that sit there, I know there's one in Plymouton, it's not really a leak, it's actually something that needs a couple of 100,000, but we're not communicating that when we do it. So people think that it's just a leak and they just moan and moan and moan, but we're not being upfront about actually it's a renewal of something that needs doing. And maybe that's at our end, not yours, but also the chasing of the ones on private property that we get continually, because they automatically think it's council. I've got one at the moment. How can we speed those up? Because I know in Porirua we are reducing the amount of water we spend, or the amount that people are saving, but it doesn't come out individually that each council saving X, Y, or Z. So I sometimes think it's actually how we're telling people and we're telling the story. Sorry, it's probably not a question. I'm probably confused.
Any other questions? Just one from me, again, with very much my lower Hutt hat on. So as everyone's aware, we have approved that additional $2.8 million to clear the backlog within our normal KPIs by Christmas. What is Wellington Water doing right now to ensure that that goal is achieved? So what are we doing right now to make sure that we're scaling up and can achieve it? Because we don't want budget timings or 1st of July to come into any of the delays of actually getting on top of this problem.
Just sneaking in to answer, let Charles off the hook for that one, because I've been talking to the team this morning. So I'd like to thank both Wellington City and Hutt City, and then Porirua, I believe, is going to do the same thing of putting additional funding in. We have learnt a few things from the setup of the Wellington City surge leak capacity around how we do things, how we extract information from our systems, and how we bundle up the work for our contractors. So for Hutt City, we're going to be treating the 2.8 million as a separate project, so it won't be done in the BAU fashion. We'll be appointing a business owner and a project manager, and the intention is to provide you with a implementation plan in the next couple of weeks so that you can see how that's going to be rolled out. The idea is to use the contractors that Wellington City are going to be using plus our local contractors, and deploy additional crews specifically to leak management. That does depend on whether Wellington City tips in its million, how quickly we could start on that.
So I want to be really clear on this, that I do not want to see a delay of work happening in Lower Hutt based on decision-making at another council. So
Absolutely.
work needs to start now. We've already approved it. We've given the permissions. I would not want to get caught up in debate at other councils. We need to get out there and fix the leaks. So can I have that absolute commitment?
Roger that. Mayor Barry.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Charles. So we'll receive and note the report that's come through. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Connolly, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Okay. Moving through to item 11, which is the draft statement of intent. Tonya, you can come forward again, and Mark, I believe. Great. This one's pretty straightforward, but it's just if anyone has any questions, mainly.
Yeah, kia ora tātou, everybody. So the statement of intent, we're drafting that at the moment. We're going to circulate that to you by the 1st of April. As per prior years, we've also requested an extension to 31 July, so that aligns with the long-term plan funding, and we completed it in that manner.
It's pretty straightforward. Any questions? No, okay, so I'll move the recommendations that we have in front of us, and that is primarily to agree with a 1-month extension, and I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Connolly, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. Moving through to item 12, which is the half-year report. And pass it back over.
Yeah, kia ora, everybody. So we'll take the report as read. A steady start to the year, focus on acute water shortage. Our capital program's at a 25% uplift, and there's certainly been a fair bit of stress on our front line, and I think they've responded pretty well to the summer. And obviously a focus on our long-term plan investment advice. So the key highlights for the first half of the year, and open to questions.
Any questions from members? Councillor Connolly?
I guess just a question around fluoride. And, it was really useful in here that we see that whilst we're not meeting the Taumata Arawai goal of 95%, we're actually not doing too badly at 93.5%. And there was some research done by a journalist about fluoridation levels around New Zealand, and I would suggest that that is actually quite a good figure nationally. But nonetheless, it's not meeting our compliance targets, and it's kind of unfortunate because we did a lot of work around fluoridation and getting things improved only like a couple of years ago. So can you give us an indication of why the fixes we made only 2 years ago haven't held and we're not meeting our fluoridation targets, and what we're doing about it, and what's the time frame to bring us to compliance?
I can do that, Ros. Thanks. And yes, it was disappointing to see overall we're just dipping below the Ministry of Health target. The reason for dipping below is we've only got single systems in each of our plants. In an ideal world, we would have resilience so that you could turn one piece of equipment off and another would be able to click in. So that is our future goal for the treatment plants. But in the interim, the thing that's made us dip below the lines is the new equipment at Gear Island, which was bought and installed in a hurry in order to provide fluoridation quickly. It has reached the end of its life earlier than it should have, so it is requiring a lot of maintenance. And when it's offline, that is what's causing our dip below what we would normally expect with a normal maintenance regime. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but it
So
is
good.
quite worrying that a piece of kit that's only 2 years old is at the end of its life. Do we, when at the time I appreciate that at the 2 years ago there was a real impetus to get fluoride fixed quickly, and that may have led to some substandard decision making around which bits of kit we bought. But were we aware at the time that this could be a consequence of us acting very quickly 2 years ago?
Yeah, I'm just going to say it was, when we look back, that was the right decision to make at the time. The idea was to get fluoride back in the water quickly. So you balance that against the fact that we know that the kit wasn't the best in market, but balanced against the delay that was between 3 and 6 months and the shipping, the issues that were there at the time, the decision was the right one. We now have to manage that.
Just similarly on the fluoride, in one of the earlier reports there was a mention of a health and safety issue relating to fluoride. And fluoride is, I'm a chemist by trade, fluoride is incredibly, and some of the fluoride acids are just incredibly toxic. I guess I just wanted to ensure that despite the fact that getting our fluoride up to compliance is a priority, that we're ensuring that our staff are doing that in a safe manner.
That's a really good question. Thanks, Ros. And we, as you know, we put a great deal of effort into ensuring that health and safety investigation is completed. As a result, we have found that the exposure was well within limits. But also as a result, we have improved our personal protective equipment for our people and the processes around that in the Waterloo plant. We've also implemented health monitoring. So urinalysis and bone density analysis of anybody that's exposed to fluoride, whether it's in the plants that dose fluoride or in our welding team. And so we are keeping an eye on that across our workforce. So it has had some positive benefits.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move that we receive and note the half-yearly report. Do I have a seconder for that? Mayor Baker. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to the letter of expectation. So I'll invite Wendy Walker, and who's going to speak to this particular item. Wendy, if you just want to give a bit of an update of post-sale workshop, of anything you'd like to touch on, but the letter is obviously there in front of us all to hopefully be able to sign off today.
Kia ora, members of the committee. The letter of expectation is largely what was tabled at the workshop following our last meeting. There have been a few editing, there was a little bit of duplication, so it's really minor editing that has gone into this. I think it's captured largely the council's views both on that day, and it's obviously been circulated post-meeting to staff who have gone through their own processes back in their own councils. So always an editing by committee is always somewhat challenging, but hopefully it reflects what you all expected to see. So happy to take comments.
Great. Okay, Councillor Connolly.
Two from me. So first of all, just a thanks for putting this together, and I'm really happy to see Te Mana o Te Wai getting a mention at the top as a guiding principle for how we will continue to manage our water, regardless of what central government thinks. I'm also really pleased to see point 6 down in the key expectations around asset management improvements. I guess I would have liked a little bit more of an impetus on Wellington Water to bring those to us. It's sort of it's a bit passive at the moment. It says that where they're identified, they'll be costed and reported back. But I do think we need to be continually looking at our asset management space and a positive obligation on Wellington Water to do that rather than just a passive obligation. I guess that my main point, though, and this is quite pedantic, but the key expectations under 1, like, they're a bit of a mix and gather 'em. And I feel sorry for anyone trying to incorporate them all into a single framework. Like, I thought the notion of the single framework was that the single framework, as it says at the bottom, must be common rather than specific to each shareholder. But I would have thought one framework that looked at reporting and performance management and maybe included benchmarking would be quite separate to something that looked at a reduced traffic management regime, and again, something that looked at a capital program planning and management framework. So it's just, I think they're kind of separate pieces of work, and as I say, I feel sorry for anyone that's going to have to incorporate them all into one single piece of work.
Wendy, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, the single framework, I think we all accept that these are separate pieces of work, and they'll no doubt come out of separate work streams within Wellington Water. The point about the single framework was more about the issue that Wellington Water faces around the diversity of expectations across councils, and how that makes it more difficult to manage and builds in inefficiencies for them. So that was the reference to single framework rather than, I think we probably all accept that there is a whole lot of work streams that contribute to that. So it was a little bit of an exhortation to the councils to tidy up our own collaboration around this. So I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, because we all have our own drivers around that, which do make it somewhat problematic. But it's what builds in efficiency to Wellington Water. So that's the single framework reference, and we did talk about that in the workshop.
Okay, any other comments? Mainly, I suppose the main thing here is that we are comfortable with where the letter is at. And so noting your comments, Councillor Connolly, there's nothing you're wanting to specifically suggest, but certainly made the point around, I think, actively looking at where those...
I don't know. I mean, I would prefer 6 to say that Wellington Water continues to investigate asset management improvements, and where smart investments are identified, these be costed and reported back. Just again, putting the positive obligation rather than a passive obligation on them. But if you guys understand that and are clear, then...
Just a process point. So you will be able to comment on the draft statement of intent when it comes back. I think next time we formally meet. Tonya, I'm slightly hazy on a report back on that. So you do get an opportunity as both as councils and as the Wellington Water Committee to make commentary on the draft before it's finalised. So there's another step in the process to enable you to interrogate the draft.
If you're comfortable, Councillor, we'll leave it as it is with that direction that's been given, and we'll have an opportunity, as Wendy mentions, at the draft statement of intent. Okay. If there's no other suggestions, then I will move the letter of expectation. So that is recommendations 1 through to 3. So that is approving, so that is authorising myself to sign this letter and send it through to the board. Do I have a seconder for that? Helmut, I think finally we got someone on this side of the table finally, so I'll make sure I split it up. Okay, so second by Helmut. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 14, role of Wellington Water in an emergency, page 124 of the agenda. Charles, welcome back. Pass it over to you.
Thank you. The paper just aimed to meet the requirement to outline the role of Wellington Water in an emergency. I think the main takeaway is that the more severe or complex an emergency is, the more Wellington Water is obliged to focus on returning the lifeline utility back to service for the community, and that correspondingly impacts our ability to support the outreach of councils into the community during that emergency. Obviously, if it's small and non-complex, we can use our capacity to assist. The main thing there for councils to be aware of is their responsibilities around distribution of water from the community infrastructure resilience containers and things like that. So, and that differs on, depending for each council, that's more or less complex.
Yeah, so it's overstating it to say this one keeps me awake at night, but since I learned that we've got, and correct me if I am overstating it, but that we have no material water source on our side of the hill in the event that things go pear-shaped and the supply from this side of the hills is broken for any duration, we're in a bit of a world of hurt. Obviously, there's no crystal balls in terms of predicting what might happen, but in the event that it's a really serious event and we can't access water from this side of the hill for a while, is it just trucks and bladders and handouts? Is that it?
Yeah, my understanding there is on the other side of the hill too, there are our community infrastructure resilience containers. There's a number of temporary supplies that we can draw on, and they vary between accessing creeks to being depot points where we bring water to, but there is an ability to sustain. The idea would be that the people have enough for their 8 days while we get that system up and running, the emergency system. The distribution of that water is the council's responsibility, and we'll sustain that while we're bringing the entire network back up and in a prioritised way.
Yeah, so, thanks for that. That's pretty much my understanding of the situation. It's fair to say, on behalf of Ngāti Toa, we're not comforted by that resilience frame. We're grateful for it, but not comforted. So the only question I'd have then is there any information about options or alternatives? Like, is there sourcing? Like, I've had some old farmers tell me there is water that you can get out of the hills up in Pikere there and, you know, blah, blah. But do we have any knowledge of alternative sourcing, like, or natural sourcing of water on our side? Do we know?
I'd have to go back and check, but I assume that would have been done as part of the project which set up the emergency scenario, but I can check on that. The really careful one is that it's got to be treated water.
Sure.
Yeah, so the main thing is to provide water that people can rely on. But I can go back and check and
appreciate
pull out
that.
some of those historical documents to give you that
Any
assurance.
information be helpful.
Whaidero does have some big tanks and some other forms of resilience over there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, so I'll move that the committee receives and notes the report by the seconder, Mia Whānau. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Exactly.
Those against no, declare that carried. 15, information item, which is the forward program. Any questions on the forward program? So I'll move that we receive and note the forward program, seconded by Mayor Baker. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no, declare that carried. Item 16, I've received no questions. So we'll go to 17, which is our closing karakia. Please feel free to join me. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia e te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, tēnā kau, tia tina, tērā wareo e te ara takatū. Koia, ria rongo, whakaeri, a aki, kia runga, kia wātia, ora, kua wātia, hau, paumarie. Thank you, everyone. I declare our meeting closed at 11:25 a.m.